Hello, everyone, and welcome to Livable Neighborhoods Good Neighbor Training. Tonight, we have two really cool projects on how to engage your neighborhood. And both of them can be done during COVID and safely, which is awesome. And so we have Shelby Woodward with MOXA, the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault. She's with the Wyandotte County Violence Prevention Coalition, and they have or WYCO-SAP too. They have a CPTED toolkit. I know many of you know the term CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. She's going to talk about that. And then afterwards, Erin Strejka with Rosedale Development Association will talk about RDA's Couch to Commission toolkit, which lets put you through the whole process to taking something from your couch to the commission. So that's really awesome as well. And so I will go ahead and pass it over to Shelby to start. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you for that introduction. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. All my faces go away, so I just hope that you guys are, hopefully y'all are happy because I can't see anyone. So
we can see it, and if there's any hands that go up or anything, I'll let you know.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, like Andrea said, I'm with MOXA. I'm Shelby. I have been in this kind of job for about 3 years, specifically working in Wyandotte County for all 3 of those years. And we're going to go into a little bit of history about WYCO-SAP. So if you haven't heard of our Violence Prevention Coalition, you will after this. And then we're going to go through our toolkit kind of section by section and give you all a good idea of how to use the toolkit and what it's for. So first off, just some background. WYCO-SAP originally started as the Sexual Assault Prevention Coalition. That's the SAP in our name. And so we're a community-based coalition. I'm sorry, I got distracted by my dog. So we're a community-based coalition of partners. And we did an assessment years and years ago before I was with MOXA. And we did an assessment of like, what can we do at the community level to prevent sexual violence? This assessment was happening around the same time as the county was doing their own assessment, the community health assessment, the CHA. And so since we were doing those about the same time, and they found that violence was something that they wanted to include in the community health improvement plan, our coalition kind of became the facilitators of the violence prevention piece of the community health improvement plan. And so our main focuses are improving neighborhood connectedness, looking at the environmental factors, the built environment or the physical environment, looking at those things and if we can change anything to make it feel safer or to actually be safer. And then we are also addressing harmful norms around violence. So yes, this is where our partnership came in. We're part of the community health improvement plan, as well as access to healthcare, safe and affordable housing, which is what Andrea is the lead agency for, and then economic and educational opportunities. So all of these are all happening at the same time. We have our own plans, but we're all working at the community level to improve Wyandotte County. Okay. Didn't give you a warning. So I know that many neighborhood leaders in Wyandotte County are very familiar with CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, like Andrea said. And we use it as a tool versus sticking to it like pretty hard. We don't really stick to it very hard. We use the principles and the like education and training and context that CPTED allows. And then we kind of flip it and focus on neighborhood connection and how to improve that piece by improving the built environment. So it involves looking at our spaces that are shared or public and finding changes that we can make to improve connection and improve perception of safety and actual safety. Oh, the video is some of our friends explaining how our coalition has had success with CPTED. And so let me see if I can find a good place to. How about this? I'll just tell you what it is. So in Jersey Creek Park, there is this tunnel that did not have lights for the longest time. Some of our partners were actually doing a CPTED assessment for a training and noticed that there were kids that were even saying that it's safer to go over than to go through the tunnel because it's dark and no one really knows what's there. And so through that and through a bunch of our partners with the UG and around Jersey Creek Park, they, excuse me, they got the funding to put in these lights in the tunnel that make it safer and more inviting and easier to use the park for its intended purposes. So this is just an example of how we've used CPTED in the community. A couple of benefits of using CPTED or environmental design changes. So it creates those opportunities to interact with your neighbors and your community. That's what the toolkit is. And so it allows you to look around your own space. And if a park isn't very inviting or very friendly, then there are some awesome questions and solutions for that in the toolkit, like having a neighborhood block party in the park, or starting a soccer club to actually utilize the park for its intended purposes, and to get you out in your neighborhood, talking with your neighbors and those kinds of things. Also, just by the name, by definition, there's an improved sense of safety, and fewer people are involved in crimes or violence. Also gives the person who is trained or learning about CPTED some prevention and problem solving skills. A lot of these things are kind of common sense once you know them. But when you have the context that I think that the toolkit provides, it makes these skills stick around a little bit longer. It also provides knowledge that I think all of our residents need. And I think RDA may agree, I think Erin may agree, that knowing more about how government agencies and those resources work is always beneficial for residents in that area. And so CPTED can provide, and this toolkit specifically can provide that for residents. So this is our toolkit. We wanted it to be an accessible document that residents can go through the questions, look at their, sorry about my dog if you can hear her whining, look at their spaces that are shared with their neighbors and their neighborhoods, find things that could, like opportunities for improvement, and then work together as a neighborhood to improve those things. So there are 4 basic CPTED principles, and those are the bottom lines. That's what CPTED calls them. Those things are not very intuitive or accessible. So when someone hears territorial reinforcement, you can probably guess what it means, but it's not as clear. And so we wanted to make sure that our document was very clear. And so we kind of changed it by changed it to these questions up here. So instead of natural surveillance, so natural surveillance is making sure there aren't trees in the way and making sure that there's proper lighting for the parking lot, those kinds of things. We changed it to, can I see others? Can others see me? And those questions are just a little bit more accessible and provide some context for names that could mean lots of things. So those are the 4 basic principles. In the toolkit, we have also added 2 additional principles. Is my neighborhood connected, and is there a sense of community? So this is an example of how we use CPTED, but we don't stick to it because we are very focused on the neighborhood connection pieces. And so these are things like, is there like easily available access to social programs? that encourage neighbors to get out and talk to each other? Are there parties or cleanups or youth soccer leagues? I'm really focused on soccer today, but those kinds of things, are those available in the areas that we're doing these assessments in? So the toolkit is broken up into a couple of different sections. I think the real meat and potatoes are the first two pieces. This assessment tool. So each principal, all 6 of them, have a few questions, like this example here. Do I know where to go? And then the questions are street signs clear and easy to read? Can I tell where to bike, walk, or use a wheelchair or drive? And then all of the questions are phrased in a way that the positive answer, the yes, means that we're good to go. There's probably not much opportunity for improvement in a basic assessment. And then no and unsure are going to be your negative answers. And that's where you can go on to the next section and find solutions and resources to fix those opportunities. The next section is the solutions page. So each principal will also have a solutions page or a solutions section. And those are just kind of, they mirror the assessment questions. And so you can see, can I tell where to bike, walk, use a wheelchair, or drive? And then we have sections that kind of describe this, like the solution option. So concerns about street safety. If you can't tell where to ride your bike, or you can't tell where to cross the street, or if there's a wheelchair ramp, Bike Walk KC has an awesome lending library where you can kind of put in curb bump outs in your street temporarily, or block off certain areas, or use bollards, those kinds of things, to address bikeability, walkability, those kinds of things. And so all of our solutions kind of directly mirror the questions that we ask. We also have 311 as a resource, which is the next section that I'll talk about. But like I said, in Livable Neighborhoods, we don't want this document to be about neighbors telling other neighbors what they can and can't do. And so not exactly in this example, because this is about street or traffic signs, but let's say that your neighbor doesn't keep up with their landscaping. That is a thing that you can call 311 for. However, you can also ask your neighbor if something's going on, or if they need help, or give them resources for landscaping options. And so we wanted to be very clear that this isn't about policing other people. You know, let people live their lives as long as they're not hurting anybody. But we did want to put in that it's an option to call 311 if you've tried other things and it's not quite working. So yes, this is the resources page, an example of the resources page. And the solutions will often send you to a resource page towards the end of the toolkit. And then we just kind of go through how to use it, who to call, what you should call these different resources for, those kinds of things. And so our other resource pages, we do have Livable Neighborhoods. We know that all the work that Andrea does with the Livable Neighborhoods it had to go on our resource page. I know that Andrea gets a lot of questions about like lawn care and home fixes and where's my neighborhood group, those kinds of things. So sorry, Andrea, we are kind of sending more people to you. But we also have all of the NBRs listed. We have all of the commissioners listed, and include a county map so that you can tell which district you're in, potentially which NBR you are a member of, or your area serves your area. And so we also are creating a Kansas City, Missouri toolkit, and the resources on the Kansas City, Missouri side. Once we did the first one, we were able to add a bunch of resources to the Missouri side. And so in the second iteration of our KCK toolkit, we're going to have a bunch more resources, like the SOAR office with the unified government, like KCK public schools, USC 500, those kinds of things. So we will have more resources, just not in this iteration of the document. All right, so I know that I talked a lot and I can't see your faces, so I hope that this went well. I feel good about it. Are there any questions that I can answer about the toolkit? Oh, I could also tell you where to find it. I think that that would be really helpful. So it's on Mox's website, and I will drop that link in the chat. So yeah, are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Shelby, you gave an example of Jersey Creek. What are some other neighborhoods or places that have been using the toolkit?
So our toolkit has been, we kind of rolled it out in a fun way. We had the opportunity to work with the Groundworks NRG's Learn to Earn program. And so they were doing a photo voice project as well as going through the toolkit. And so we have some really awesome pictures from the youth's perspective of what these CPTED violations, concerns, opportunities for improvement are. And so we are going to actually, from that rollout, we are also going to create a youth toolkit using some of the pictures from the photo voice project that the youth completed.
That's cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Shelby, will this be translated into Spanish and will there be hard copies of it?
Yes, so thank you for asking that. The Spanish document is ready to go. It has been translated. We just have to send it off to printing. And so we will send it this week. So we will have Spanish copies very soon. It will be on the website first because it's ready to go on the website now. So I guess I can do that this week. And then we do have physical copies. Andrea, I can bring you some when either whenever, if you want the Spanish copies to be translated or to be printed first, then I can bring them at the same time, or I can bring you some English copies whenever.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it would be good to have hard copies at the office for people.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't given them to you yet.
Are there any other questions?
It looks like Jeff has his hand raised.
Oh yeah, hey, there we go.
Hey, Shelby, say if I'm a resident and I want to look at different ways to maybe make my home a little more secure. Is there somebody from your organization that will or can come out and kind of talk me through different things that I should do, actually do a little CPTED evaluation on my home?
Sure. So a lot of our partners are CPTED trained. However, we don't actively do resident assessments, but every one of the, I'm sorry, I'm totally forgetting, the division of police officers that do community engagement.
Community policing?
Thank you. Okay, that was silly. I'm silly. Yes, the community policing division. Most of them, if not all of them, are also CPTED trained. And I believe that if you give them a call, your community policing officer will come out and do an assessment. I know that a lot of the sheriff's department is also CPTED trained and they will do assessments as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your dog's name?
Her name is Pierogi.
That's
I know she's usually in the background of all of my videos. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone's face while I am silently waiting for questions.
Great.
I do this all day. I've worked with teenagers before, so.
Any other questions that anybody might have?
Okay, I'll drop the link to it in the chat in just 1 second. And then Andrea, I can bring you by some English copies this week.
That'd be great, thank you. Yeah. And then just to remind everybody, when it gets dropped in the chat, if you just click on the link, you can open it up on your computer and keep it there. And when it's a PDF, you can just save it from there. I had the question last week and I had never really thought about it, explaining how it works when you want to get something out of the chat. So that's how you do that. But thank you so much, Shelby. I appreciate it.
I'll also drop, we do have a brochure a CPTED brochure. I'll also drop that in the chat, and I'll bring some by as well, Andrea.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, Erin.
Man, thanks so much. Thank you, Shelby. That was really great. That's the second time I've seen that training and I learned new stuff. So thank you very much for doing that. And the rest of you, it's so nice to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. Advocacy and CPTED have a couple of major things in common. One of them being that for those of you who've been doing neighborhood work for a long time, it's common sense, and beyond that, it's just what you do every day. It's your mode of being. You're walking around in your neighborhoods doing CPTED, doing advocacy at all times. And what gets tricky about that is passing on that knowledge to somebody who doesn't have it yet. And so this Couch to Commission guide came out of that, this kind of perennial problem I have of trying to do everything myself and recognizing that I wanted to get better at passing on the stuff that we knew how to do at RDA. And also it was my pandemic project and I was very stuck in my house and I needed something to do on the computer. So that's how Couch to Commission was born. But the idea is it is a gradual approach to advocacy because much like crime prevention, changing policy at the local government level is a big, huge task. It's very abstract and conceptual, and it's very intimidating. But the steps to it are pretty basic stuff, and it can be written down and taught. So we did the Couch to Commission guide. So I'm going to hit share screen and show you this. So we called it Couch to Commission after a Couch to 5K program, which is a type of running program that I've done many times. It's for non-runners, and this is for non-advocates. It's a gradual approach. It starts with a strategy guide that just talks about the basic principles of advocacy. So the first one is you don't do it alone, right? You need your neighborhood group, you need your neighbors, you need your allies, you need people who care about your thing. So the first step is to build a coalition. And in the youth version of this, we call it a dream team, but it's a coalition. And if you are new to this type of work, you're thinking who needs to be in your coalition. And in RDA, we always think about who's most impacted, who does this issue affect, who cares, who's passionate, who's got the energy, and then who is willing and available. Because we all know the busy people get stuff done, but we also know our same people in Wyandotte County get very overloaded doing the same things all the time. So thinking about who's willing. You pull your group together and then you define the problem. You try to get it specific and clear. We pick some Rosedale examples. There is no sidewalk on 42nd Avenue from Lloyd to Mission. This has been my problem for a few years now. It is a problem. It is very easy for me to talk about this problem. It's very concrete and defined. Develop a solution. What do you want to change? I want to complete that sidewalk. That's what I want. It's easy, it's clear. There is no sidewalk. I want a sidewalk. We also talk about how you guys know how hard it is to build a sidewalk in Wyandotte County. And so you also need some low-hanging fruit. You need a couple small goals along the way to keep the momentum moving toward your goal. Otherwise, as you know, your neighborhood leaders get discouraged and they wander off on you. So if your goal is a sidewalk, maybe your starter goal is we're not getting enough attention paid to this sidewalk. I want to see my commissioners walk this sidewalk with me. Hey, that's doable. We're just taking a walk. It's also important to celebrate that. You got to throw a big party when something works, even something little. And then it's important to change your mind as you go to learn and try different things. Come back to your problem and your solution and adapt as needed. We have some advocacy tools that you can use to kind of organize this work, especially for things that are a little bit bigger and more complicated. So if you're planning out your advocacy, one thing that can be really helpful is a power map. And again, this is one of these things that you all probably do in your heads automatically. But if you're teaching somebody who hasn't done this yet, you have to teach them how to think, okay, which commissioners are for this and which are against it, and who of our business community has a lot of influence in this neighborhood and who is not somebody who gets listened to a lot, and who all is involved in this and where do they go on that power map. And that's going to kind of lead you to who you got to talk to, who you got to get on board for your advocacy issue. And this is, this graphic may not make sense to anybody at first, so there's instructions for using it. So think about decision makers, think about influencers. Who do our commissioners listen to? Think about core constituencies. Who are our commissioners thinking about when they're campaigning? Think about organized groups. Boy, we love to call MOXA when we've got a safety issue in the neighborhood. Who are the groups who know what's going on? Who are the experts? We also love to call MOXA when we got a safety issue in the neighborhood. Who knows what's going on? And by the way, are you engaging all of the demographic groups in your area and all the geographic groups? Are you leaving anybody out whose voice is important in this? So that helps you kind of think through all the people involved. And then once you've got your people mapped out, you got to map out what exactly you're going to do. And there are lots and lots of different approaches to advocacy. So you can probably right now think of 8 different things you've done in your neighborhoods to advance an issue. You've held a bake sale to raise some money for it. You've shown up at planning commission. Maybe you've done a march. Maybe you've done a block party to get everybody together. All sorts of different tactics. But to somebody who hasn't been around and used all these different things, they may need a little help figuring out what exactly is going to work. So if you think about those people on your map, who is it exactly that you got to convince? Is it the public? Is it your whole neighborhood? Is it the people who live there? Is it the influencers? Is it the Chamber of Commerce? Is it the church community? Or is it the decision makers? Do you need the commissioners to make a decision? And then once you've decided which of those groups you're going after, what change do you want them to make? Are they not even aware of the issue and you got to build their awareness? Are they aware but they just don't care very much and you got to get them to care? Or are they aware they care, they're just not quite to doing anything about it yet and you got to move them into action? And then if you kind of use that intersection, okay, I need to get my influencers knowing what's going on. The church community doesn't understand CPTED and I got to teach it to them, okay? Well, maybe then your tactic is influencer education and you're doing a CPTED class for your churches. Maybe you feel like your decision makers totally understand your issue, but they're very indifferent to it. Maybe that's something called champion development. Maybe you're targeting a specific couple of decision makers and really working on them to understand and care about why this issue is important and hoping to develop 1 or 2 people into being the champions for this issue. So you got lots of different things you can try. There are definitions for all of these in there. So let's say that you've identified your issues, you figured out your tactics. This is where we get into kind of the nuts and bolts. So just communication templates. So starting with postcards. Postcards are great. They're easy. They can be whatever you want them to be. It's really helpful if like 100 of them show up at the mayor's desk. That makes an impact. And you can get a lot of people involved in them. So these templates are literally that. Hello, decision maker. My name is Erin. I live in Rosedale, this street. This issue is important to me because of really sick of walking in the street on 42nd Avenue. please consider adding 42nd Avenue to CMIP. It has been 5 years. Please, seriously, for real. Thank you very much, Aaron Strika. Really easy template that anybody could use for anything with kind of explanations about why. And this is a great activity or a great pullout to use with a neighborhood group or a youth group because it's easy. It's concrete. Anybody can do it. Got templates for emails, got templates for video messages, if anybody wants to get into that. Recently, that Mayor's Task Force on Community and Police Relations requested videos from people and they couldn't get them. Nobody really sent them in. I think partly people weren't super jazzed about talking about rough experiences with the KCKPD, and partly people don't do a lot of videos of themselves. But because that's not used very often, it may be very effective. So that's worth considering. Social media posts. Thank goodness I have a social media person in my office who wrote this section for me because I am bad at it, but there are templates here if you are also bad at it. And hey, did you get to the point of a meeting with your commissioner? Fantastic. What do you do now? Before the meeting, make sure that you get your numbers together and get your stories together, because that's what they respond to, right? They respond to hard facts and they respond to important stories. Practice, use an agenda. Don't let it become a venting session. Get yourself organized, go through the thing. Hey, look, here's a sample agenda that you can just take right out and use. Anybody remember the first time they spoke at a commission meeting? It's probably been a while for a lot of us. You know how they sit like 10 feet above you in that like scary circle staring down at you, and the microphone's always at the wrong height and it makes a weird sound? That whole thing is really unsettling when you first get into it. So that's one that I think people need a lot of preparation for, particularly practice. You want to practice what you're going to say. You want to know they're going to cut you off after 3 minutes. You want to really go through it so that you're comfortable. And we've got a little script too that you can start with, because there's, after a big circle of commissioners staring down at you, there's nothing scarier than a blank page. So having a template to start with can make this a little bit easier. Okay, that was the strategy section. Next up, who are you strategizing to? Livable Neighborhoods has this wonderful map of who you call for various neighborhood issues. This is, in my opinion, a slightly less cool version of this, but it's advocacy focused. So here's the issue: streets, curbs, sidewalks, streetlights, stormwater. Level of government, it's local. You're going to talk to Public Works, you're going to talk to the commission. All of these in here are links, so that if you get this online instead of printed out, this will just take you straight to Public Works phone number or what email, and you can call them. Parks and Rec, economic development, urban planning, code enforcement, all of that. We got some stuff in here for state level stuff too, because you've probably all had the fun experience of calling the UG and they say, oh, that's KDOT, we can't do anything about that. This maps that out and tells you who to call for those things. Oh, and there's a blank page in that. I don't know if that's my computer problem. Okay. So this guide is for Rosedale, but it is in a Microsoft Word document. Anybody can edit it. So these are the folks that represent Rosedale's district, but you can just pop these folks right out and put in your commissioners, your representative, your senator, if you like. We got phone numbers, we got email addresses, we got pictures. So if you see them on the streets, you can pin them down, tell them about your issue, all there. Now, this is the part that I feel like is in my head for no good reason, and I've never really seen it explained all that well. Was anybody around for Schoolhouse Rock videos, how a bill becomes a law? This is Shelby's era, at least, I think. Yeah, this is how a bill becomes a law in the UG. So two paths, right? One can start either at a special session sometimes, which is just information. They never vote on anything, just information. Then always it goes to a standing committee, and there's more information about that. And then it goes to full commission. So everything gets heard 2, maybe 3 times. You got 2, maybe 3 chances to make your point about something. It can also go through planning commission if it's a planning or zoning issue. And still you got 2 chances. You got planning commission and then it goes on to full commission. This confuses the absolute heck out of people. So I wanted it written down, visual, clear. Then what happens with this? So here's what we've got. When does it meet? If it's special session, it's Mondays or Thursdays at 5 p.m. It's only when it's called. If it's standing committee, it's Mondays at 5 p.m. If it's planning commission, it's the second Monday of the month at 6 p.m. So everything the commission decides starts at one of those 3 times. Where do you get the agenda? Here's the agendas. And then how exactly do you comment? Because they haven't made it super easy for you. So you can email ugclerkrequest@wycokck.org. Okay, that works. Or you can email planninginfo@wycokck.org. That's if you want to submit a written comment in advance. What if you want to speak? Okay, you can still send that email or you can call that number. Planning commission, you just got to raise your hand and you got to be fast. If you email first, hopefully they'll call on you, but mostly you got to raise your hand and you got to be fast. Hey, you haven't done this before. Did you know that you can't start talking until you say your name, address, and if it's a Zoom meeting, they want your phone number if you're calling from a phone? Did you know they'll cut you off after 3 minutes? If you're calling them by telephone, do you know you have to email planning info because otherwise there's no raise hand function and they'll have no idea? Just fun little details that you got to work out. And hey, did you know there are deadlines? If you don't get it in by the deadline, you can't speak. Now, separate question is whether it should be that complicated, but right now it is. And so this is an attempt to demystify it and make it easy for somebody to call in. So then after it starts at one of those 3 places, it comes down here to full commission. Thursdays at 7 p.m. agendas are here. Here's how you get to speak. Oh, hey, that consent agenda thing confuses everybody, right? Because they don't actually talk about everything. If something's on the consent agenda, you have to request it be removed from the consent agenda so that it can be talked about. All of these little details that exist in your brains, but somebody coming into this would have no earthly idea that that's the deal. Deadlines. And then we have a resource guide. Actually, Shelby, I'm going to go in and borrow some of your resources, I think, but here's what we've got. So these are the goals the commission has committed to, right? So when we are advising somebody how to advocate in Rosedale, we always have them start here. What did the commission already say it was going to do? And how does that connect to what you're asking them to do? Would anyone like to talk about the budget process? It is so confusing. They publish this calendar as a PDF, usually several months after they start into it. I don't even believe they put out next year's yet, but I think I got this literally in May and it took some doing to track it down. But here's the budget workshop and I'll take it out, and put in next year's as soon as I can get hold of it. But hey, something most people don't think about or know, budget process starts in February. So if you want something to get paid for in 2023, you really got to start up here. And for sure, you got to start by March 11th when that first hearing happens. Other funding. We all know how broke we are as a county. So if you were asking the commission to fund something, one of the most effective things you can do is bring some of your own money. So here are resources for how to organize a fundraiser. Hey, guess what? The Neighborhoods Rising Fund is a wonderful resource. Livable Neighborhoods is a wonderful resource. Think about the Walmart Community Grant. Think about the U of G Hollywood Casino Fund. There are more of those, but try to bring your own money is a great, great, great tactic. Rosedale is covered by 2 master plans. So these are also things the commission has already agreed to do. This is what development will look like in Rosedale. And so what's your issue? How does it fit into the master plan? Because we already said we were going to do it. And then how many of you get that call from somebody, hey, what's going on with that building over on that street? I bet I get 3 of those calls a day. And instead of me just trying to figure out what's going on with that building, I tried to put together how you find out what's going on with that building. Probably y'all know about this, but dot maps shows you who owns it, shows you how it's zoned, shows you property lines, shows you the tax status. Pretty much everything you need to know about a parcel. Maui shows you if any building permits have been pulled for it. Do they have an open codes case? Did they get a rental license? Do they have a license to operate a business at that address? Have they applied for any planning applications? Super great resource. Tells you everything that's going on with the building. UG planning, not as easily searchable as these other ones, but if you know when this went to Planning Commission, you can look up the minutes of that meeting and the staff's report on it, and there's lots and lots of extra information there. Is it for sale? Zillow for residential buildings, LoopNet for commercial buildings. And then got stuck, call building inspection, call planning, ask for Janet, or just go knock on the door and ask them what's going on. So that's the guide, and I will also put the link to this in the chat. What questions do you have?
I know Carol asked in the chat about getting a copy. So Erin, I'll ask you the same question. Is it translated and do you have hard copies?
It is not translated, and I will have hard copies. I don't yet, but we just got a little bit of money to get them professionally printed, and I will send you one, Carol, as soon as I do.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Jeff.
Yes, Erin, at the beginning of your presentation, it sounded an awful lot like a problem-solving model that they use in community policing called SARA. You familiar with that? SARA?
No, I'm not. Tell me about it.
It's an acronym that means scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. And it was almost exactly what you were talking about there, but it just sounded familiar to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Advocacy is collective problem solving, and so is a lot of police work, I think. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Erin, I wish this Couch to Commission guide was around when we were first doing stories on stories. The commissioner information and how everything works would have been great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful to know.
Any other questions? Anybody thinking of ways that they can use either of these toolkits in their neighborhood?
I just think this is an awesome presentation, and I would like to be able to share it because it has some areas that where we have done some of those, but we need to have some of them in order. And some of these, the information that you have shared, not knowing how the system works or how you go forward with projects, is so helpful. This is wonderful. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Carol.
And Carol, the way that I have them recorded now, I should be able to share the link here soon. So I figured out how to do it finally. So I can share this recording of the presentation with everyone in the form of a link. And that way that you can pass it along to other people as well that way.
I agree. I think this was a pretty good eye opener, especially for me, because in my subdivision now, I'm kind of working on an issue where we're having issues with the streets are sinking in certain areas throughout the subdivision. I actually met with our Commissioner Philbrook a couple of weeks ago, and she actually rode through with me, and I pointed out everything that we had concerns about. And it looks like from what you're saying, I may need to start attending some of those commissioner meetings and voicing some concerns and getting my act together and let them know that I guess we're gonna start squeaking. And then you know what they say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So get some of the homeowners in this neighborhood, we'll start squeaking and maybe we can get something done.
Jeff, that's really great. I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm looking for another resource that I want to share with you guys. The UG recently put all of their CMIP projects in this really cool map. Andrea, do you know what I'm talking about? Where is that? They basically will show you now what the schedule is for all kinds of street improvements, what year everything is mapped for. And so you can look at, hey, is this actually planned for 5 years from now? Is this even on their radar screen? Here it is.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let me put that up.
Now we just need a way to get people involved and keep them involved.
Yeah.
Mario, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'll actually just, just a comment, Aaron, yeah, it's a great presentation, but and I've served, on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And, there's a lot of time we get folks there that show up and just don't know, the process of what goes on, so, it's very, very helpful, whatever, so thanks, for your presentation.
Thanks, Maria.
That's an interesting perspective from the other side of the table, saying, thank you for letting people know how, how to present to us. Great. Any other questions or comments? I feel like you're collectively on a mission to keep it right at 1 hour or below as a group. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions or any other comments, I want to thank Shelby and Aaron for being here today. These are wonderful. I have been advocating for these two toolkits to be used everywhere I can. And so we'll make sure to have copies available for anyone who would like them. And we can print some if we need to print from their website. So if you want some and they're not available yet, or we don't have them yet, I can print some off for you. I'll also make sure to, I say this, and so if you don't hear from me, please check back. I will make sure to share the links of everything and also share the link to this video now that I know how to do it. I will share that with everyone so you can share it with your groups as well. I think these are wonderful tools and great ways to engage our neighborhood, especially when it's not safe to come together yet. Safe things we can do outside, especially when the weather's not as hot. Right? Like we can maybe get together outside and talk about some of these things. So I want to thank you all for being here, for providing this presentation to us, Shelby and Aaron. And you all have a wonderful—
Wait a minute, Andrea. I want to know if either one of those ladies are available to attend like group meetings to talk with neighborhood folks. Do you guys do that?
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
Invite me to everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can get your contact information from Andrea.
Yes, I can get that for you. Or Erin, just put her email in the chat too.
Okay.
But yes, I can, if you need contacts for either Erin or Shelby, I can get that to you.
Okay.
if you want to do that, and both of their emails are in the chat. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Tanya, for joining us. She's kind of new to our group and she's wanting to do some work in KCK and volunteer and help. So thank you for joining us, Tanya.
You're
And-
welcome. It was a good informational. I'm struggling with, I've had to move back to my childhood home, and yeah, it's a struggle with, I've done that 311, but there's a homeless camp starting to set up, and the person who owns the property, they won't answer us back. So it's kind of like, we're trying to, as a community, trying to figure out how to get that stopped before it goes any further.
So you have a couple tools to engage your neighbors and have more in-depth conversations about it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. And I will see you next month is our last one for the year. So we'll see you next month. Thank you, Erin and Shelby.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.